Good evening, everyone. Good to see all of you here with us this evening. My name is Vivian Khalaf, and I am the current president of SAUTU, an organization that is dedicated to ensuring that each and every elected person eligible to vote is registered and casts their vote in each and every election cycle. Thank you for being with us here this evening. We look forward to having a robust and engaging discussion with our guest, Amer Zahr, who I'll introduce in a few moments. And actually, he needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. But again, thank you for being us. I know that we all are busy, even though most of us continue to be confined to our homes to a great extent. And if you weren't committed to the mission of this organization and of other like-minded organizations, you wouldn't be here with us this evening. So again, thank you for your time. The organization SAUTU, which is an Arabic term, which means collective voice. And that is basically what we hope to be. One voice, united in purpose, collective work towards a united mission, for the common interest of our community, which is the Middle Eastern and North African community. SAUTU came into being just several months ago, brand new. And honestly, it was the result of the election of Rush Darwish, the campaign of Rush Darwish for Congress. Many of us who currently serve on the board were very active in his bid for a congressional seat in the 3rd district. And the results were much less than what we expected. We gathered ourselves and dusted ourselves off and said, look, it doesn't stop here. We want to make sure that the next time someone from our community runs for any office, local or national, that we hit the ground running. We're ready to go. It is high time that our community is represented in politics, both on a local as well as a national level. But that requires us to vote. And before we can vote, that requires us to become registered to vote. And in order to register to vote, we need to be educated as to why it is essential that each and every member of this community is registered to vote if they are eligible. So that is the simple purpose and mission of SAUTU, is to vote and to ensure that we all do so. Hopefully, we can create what I have termed a consequential voting bloc. Thousands of Arab American and Middle Eastern voters who vote collectively and demand of their elected officials to cater to their interests as they cater to others, and also to hear our voices and address our concerns. If we don't vote, if they don't see that we are going to the ballot boxes in numbers, nobody is going to listen to us, and we have no right to complain at that point. So again, we're dusting ourselves off. No more do we want to see our candidates running and losing. We're going in it to win, but we have to play in order to win. And we have to play fair, and we have to do so with strength, and there's strength in numbers. So that's our purpose, and that's what we want to talk about this evening. And we want to speak about it with somebody that is familiar to all, and that is Amer Zahr. And I'm going to bring him on. I'm just going to introduce him with a few lines because he has become a household name as a comedian, but he's much, much more than a comedian. And he has some good things to tell us. And also, I believe he is going to embark on a very interactive discussion on several topics. The first is voting and what it takes to vote and what it takes to support candidates. And we're going to talk about money as well, because it also takes money, not just voting, to win elections and to ensure that the candidates that serve our interests win elections. And we'd like all your support financially as well in the days, months, and years to come. And we'll talk a little bit about how important that is in the next few minutes. But again, Amer Zahr is an Arab American comedian, speaker, writer, and actually a law professor. Many people don't know that. You know, it's comedy that is the highlight of his career and how he know him best. But he has many experiences in many, many different areas. And he draws from these experiences as a child of Palestinian immigrant parents. He performs comedy and lectures on topics ranging from politics, society, Islam, and growing up an Arab in this country. He most recently served as a surrogate for presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, who I myself supported, and I'm sure many of you have supported, but he is a surrogate, was a surrogate for Bernie Sanders, and so too is a nonpartisan organization. So we don't just represent the points of views of Democrats or Republicans, but everyone. Those of us who are aligned with a party, and those of us who are not, and those of us who don't care to ever be aligned with a particular party. But Amer did support Bernie Sanders. I might say he did a fantastic job. We all saw several speeches that he did on behalf of Bernie. And he is also the founder and producer of something called 1001 Laughs Ramallah Comedy Festival. And you can read more about him on his website and on his page. And I'm sure he'll discuss more about himself as he talks to us this evening. So let's bring Amer in, and I'll come back and we'll talk more a little bit later. Amer, welcome, and thank you for being here this evening.
Hi, everybody. I'm wearing my mask. Is that okay, Vivian?
That's okay. I'm trying to take a look at you. I don't know if you look better with or without it.
I think I look better with this. What does everybody else think? Just give me a thumbs up. Should I wear this all the time? Yeah. All right. Now let me get a little bit more comfortable here. Oh, much more comfortable. Much more comfortable. Hi, Vivian. How are you?
Doing good, Ahmed. How are you? Good to see you.
I cannot complain. I cannot complain. La shak, like my dad always says. La shak.
I'm no wood, as they say. You know, you're all light, and it's good to see you, even though it's through a screen.
Yes. Well, I'm very happy to be with everyone here today, and thanks for everybody for joining. Everyone here does the same kind of work I do, and I know you all do. And voter engagement is something that, let me tell you a little story. So, you know, we came to America when I was 3 years old. I was born in Jordan, and my dad was a political activist, and we kind of, how can I say this? We kind of got kicked out of Jordan, and then we came to America, ended up here. And we were very, very involved in our local community. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And my first engagement in politics, I remember when I was a kid, I think I was in the 5th grade, and I was really just trying to fit in. I was trying to be a white kid and fit in and all that kind of stuff. And our school teachers went on strike. And I remember my dad taking us down to march with the teachers who were on strike. And he said then, you know, the teachers should be able to make us enough money to live in our school district, because that's what they were asking for. And we marched with the teachers, the strike ended. And then right after that, my dad ran for school board where we lived, and he won. He ended up serving on the school board. You know, we lived in a very white community. He was the first immigrant of any kind to serve on their school board before that and since then. And that was my first sort of exposure to getting involved in local politics. And of course, it's blossomed into getting involved in national politics. And since then, you know, of course, we was drilled into our heads, vote in every election. I have voted in every single election since I was 18 years old, whether it was president or whether it was city clerk or whether it was some little ballot initiative that maybe had nothing to do with me. Vote, vote, vote was driven into me as a kid. And it's something that I've been trying to work on, and I'm so happy to have started this initiative to make sure. And Vivian, one of the things that you wrote in a statement that really resonated with me is we have to show that our votes are not just present and not just, you can't just get them by showing up to a restaurant and, you know, eating hummus with us or whatever, but we have to show that our votes are consequential. And that really is what I've been trying to drive into our community for a long time. Remember, and I've learned this through a lot of activism.
You keep stealing my money, Late.
Who does?
You do. Did you?
Or maybe somebody should put their,
You're not
who's
getting
that, Ann? Can you mute her?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah, the car.
You're not getting shit.
I'll wait till
my
she
car.
gets muted because she doesn't know that her microphone is
You
on.
got no license.
You don't have any money?
Yeah, let me text
Look,
her.
man.
I mean, you guys can
I
mute
can
them. The
transfer it
admins
to
can mute
your
them.
car.
Yeah,
Yeah,
can
the
the host
admins
mute
can.
her,
You have
please?
to go to Jewel then.
Negative, it's like it's some.
Amer, is this
Oh.
part of your shtick?
No, this is not part of my show.
Was that a bit?
I don't deal with this kind of shit in my show. If this happens in my shows, they get kicked out. But we'll let her stay because her name is Ann and maybe she's white and we don't want to piss off the white people. So, but I've learned through lots of political activism the following principles that I always try to tell to people, and especially in our community, because in our community we've always thought it's enough just to be talked to. And you know what? In the beginning, Vivian, maybe that was enough. They show up to one of our events and we say, okay, thanks. But we are a much more mature and savvy political electorate now. And it's not enough anymore for politicians just to show up to our events. They have to now do what we want them to do. And that means, remember, politicians are just tools to get things done for your community. There's nothing magical about a politician. There's nothing, they're not gods, they're not kings, right? They're just people and they change. Guess what? They change, but our values and our principle in our community doesn't change, right? Our principles stay the same. And so we have to make sure that we are staying very consistent about those things. And that means being involved with votes and money, but also knowing, very importantly, how to say no to a politician. And I saw that happen in so many different ways. We saw it happen in Chicago just this last election cycle, where different communities, not just the Arab community, but different communities got together and said no to a dynasty politician in the Chicago suburbs, Dan Lipinski. It's okay to say no. It's okay, we too much have sometimes in our psyche that, oh, let me make sure this politician likes me, takes a picture with me. What my message to every Arab American out there is, don't try to take a picture with a politician. Do something so that politician wants to take a picture with you. Okay? That's the way it works. Trust me, they need us way more than we need them. Sometimes we still live in this mindset of a brand new immigrant community who just wants to be included. A seat at the table is nice, but now we demand respect, recognition, and action on our issues. Otherwise, your vote doesn't mean anything. If a politician thinks he can get your vote with a picture and with showing up to a dinner, then trust me, you will never be respected. And so we need to vote, but we need to vote with principle. And we need to be able to say to politicians, no. That's what it means to me when we say we make our votes consequential. And that means vote. And that means be engaged, but let these politicians know that our votes are not cheap. Our support is not cheap. There's all these questions going to be coming up. And those are the principles that I would like to sort of discuss. I don't want to talk too long because I want us to have a discussion with everyone here and hopefully everybody watching on Facebook. But we have to be willing. Aren't our principles, let me put it like this, aren't our principles, especially when it comes to Palestine, especially when it comes to Islamophobia and anti-Arabness, which is still so prevalent, unfortunately, throughout both parties. Aren't our principles important enough to us to risk not getting invited to a Ramadan dinner at the White House or not being a buddy of a certain administration? I hope so. I hope so. I hope everyone on this call and everyone in the Arab American community feels that way, because that's how communities gain power. Look at the African American community, what they did in this cycle. The African American community in this cycle, who the Democratic Party and Joe Biden knows that they are fully, for the most part, almost entirely behind him and the Democratic Party. But when there was some worry that Joe Biden was not going to pick a Black woman to be his running mate, what did the Black community do? Some of the largest activists and intellectuals in the Black community wrote a public letter to the Joe Biden campaign saying, you better pick a black woman or else our support could go somewhere else. And that is the kind of courage and the sort of political maturity that we need to have as a community too. No one has our vote. You can't take our vote for granted unless you speak up about our issues. This was what we did with Bernie Sanders, right? You think Bernie Sanders got up and talked about Palestine because, he just thought it was a good idea? No. Activists got to him, many from around the country, and said, look, Bernie, here's the deal. And Bernie wasn't always good on Palestine. And by the way, even everything Bernie eventually said wasn't where we want him to be on Palestine. But he changed the conversation fundamentally. He said things that completely changed the way this is looked at the highest level of national politics. But it was because we said to him, Bernie, if you do these things, then we can go with a straight face to our community and deliver you votes. And it happened in 2016 and happened in 2020. And this is the last thing I'll say. In 2020, here, so I live in Dearborn. You guys all know Dearborn. It's like the Arab Disneyland. It's the Arab capital. Everything is here. And we have precincts, many precincts in Dearborn, which are 90% and above Arab voters, okay? And we ran numbers after the March presidential Democratic primary here in Dearborn. And what we did was we obviously did a lot of organizing to get the vote out for Bernie in the Democratic primary in March. And when we looked at the numbers afterwards, this is what we saw. Because Bernie spoke about justice for Palestinians. He spoke about justice for Yemenis. He just spoke a lot of foreign policy stuff that resonates deeply with us. And he put our faces out to be major advocates for him, like me and Linda Sarsour. And what happened? We found that in Dearborn, there was a 50% increase in voter turnout from the 2016 Democratic primary. And Arab Americans voted for Bernie Sanders 85% over Biden, 15%. So that means we have better than polls. We have real case studies which we can show to politicians and say, look, when you speak about our issues and you include us in the face of your campaign and empower us to be out there and organize for you, we can get you higher turnout and we can get you major unity in voting for you. So why would we give our vote to any politician for anything less, right? These are the questions we have to ask ourselves and the strategies we have to have moving forward. So I really appreciate you all being here. I want to keep most of this for a back and forth between the audience here and me. But thank you again, Soltu, for everything you do. And thank you again, Vivian, for everything you do. And please, everybody, I'm looking out in the crowd here. I know a lot of you. I've come to events. I've seen your cars. I know some of you are doctors. I know you have money. Give some money to Soltu. They need money to do this kind of work, to make sure that our community is engaged and engaged in principle. I know Vivian. I know Rush. I know these guys are going to be advocates for us, but in a way that can make us proud. They're not going to ask us to get involved and maybe vote for a candidate. I know Soltu can't ask people to vote for candidates, but they're not going to ask us to get involved just because a candidate shows up to one of our events. They're going to ask for real issues and real policies based on our principles. I know they're going to do that. So please support them any way you can. Thank you all again for being here, and let's have that discussion. Thanks, Vivian.
Thanks, Amer. Thank you. And thank you for making a pitch for money. Of course, it takes money to do anything. Money talks, it really does. And we don't want to just talk, we want to sow it. So too, okay? Yes. We want a collective voice. And, some of us can only afford so much. Some of us can't afford anything at all. And you know what? It's all good. It's all okay. We, of course, would like big money donors. We want to use your dollars wisely and transparently, but the small donations is really what keeps us going and what is going to continuously keep us going.
And I would encourage people, I assume Soltu has a way where people can sign up, maybe like with a monthly donation. So
with a monthly, that's what I'm saying. That's something that's got in the works. Yeah. Absolutely.
Think of it like an insurance policy. You guys all have insurance for your car in case you get into an accident. Well, $20, $50 a month to SOTU is your insurance for when our voting rights have an accident or when our voting rights are under assault. That is insurance to make sure these things are being taken care of. And I know that Vivian at the head of this thing is going to make sure that's taken care of. So sign up for a monthly donation, please, please.
Absolutely. And not only insurance, we want to be ready when any one of you that I'm looking at decides to run for office. We want to encourage you. It's not about me. It's not about Rush anymore. It's not about Mirvat, who ran for alderwoman and also unfortunately didn't make it. And the many of us who have tried with passion and just couldn't cross the finish line. We need to hit the ground running as soon as somebody expresses an interest in running for office. We don't want to start from point zero and struggle to catch up all of the time. And that's why it's very critical that we have a robust account with monthly donations and we have money when we need it, as we need it. And again, not always trying to play catch up. So if any of you are interested in doing so tonight, please inbox us, sign up for a monthly donation. You know, rather than having 5 cups of Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts a month, you know, make it 3 and chip in that extra $10, $15 a month. There's ways that we can look at our own budgets and say, look, what's important and what's not? And can I shave off a few dollars every month to contribute to an organization such as SOTU? So please think about that. And a segue, a good way to continue this discussion with Amer. Amer, what do you say to people who tell you, look, there's really no difference between Trump and Biden on Palestine, and therefore I don't think I'm going to vote? These are people who say, look, I vote based on what the politicians say in connection with Palestine. Many Palestinians in this community, many are passionate about freeing Palestine. I've always said, and it's always been my opinion, that you're not going to free Palestine from the halls of the US Congress. It takes much more than that. But when we are approaching an election in November and you have hundreds and thousands of Arab Americans and Palestinians passionate about our cause in the homeland and decide not to vote because they don't think it's going to make a difference, what do you tell these people?
Here's the way I look at this current election coming up, okay? First of all, there will be people in the community and people sometimes outside of the community that will make Palestinian Americans and Arab Americans feel bad for being very loud and judging a candidate on how they stand on Palestine. They'll use words like, don't be a single issue voter and BS like that. There is nothing to be ashamed of for casting your vote based on how a politician views Palestine. It doesn't mean that you're not smart enough to know about other issues and care about other issues. There is no shame in saying the thing I care about most is what a candidate, especially a presidential candidate, because presidents decide foreign policy basically without Congress. There is nothing wrong with saying I care what a candidate thinks about Palestine, and therefore I want to push them on this issue and hold out my vote on this issue. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing shameful in that. People will make you feel bad about that. Sometimes even fellow Palestinians will make you feel bad. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, are Biden and Trump the same on Palestine? Of course not. Of course not. They're not the same. But that's not the question that I ask. I ask, are they going to cause us the same amount of harm? To me, that's a question that's, look, Vivian, let me say, Vivian, you're a lawyer, so you should have said this, but maybe I should say this too. I'll say this in the name of SOTU. Our speaker tonight in no way represents the views of SOTU or any of the board members or anything they say, and they don't have to be associated with it.
Total disclaimer.
Yeah, let's put a disclaimer out there, okay? I don't work for SOTU.
You
No, I don't. But
noted.
Look, Trump is an idiot. I say this on stage, right? I mean, there's never been a president this dumb. I mean, he's an idiot, and he doesn't have any real policies. He doesn't have any real ideas. Okay, he doesn't have any real ideas about the Arab world or Middle East politics. He told everybody he moved the embassy to Jerusalem because he wanted to please evangelicals in Kentucky and Tennessee and Alabama. We know that he doesn't have any real ideas. Okay, and that's a problem. All right. Biden, on the other hand, does have a real ideology about Palestine and the Arab world, and it's extremely Zionist and pro-Israel. So he has these are the things we have to understand. Biden has a long history of saying, I'm a Zionist. If there weren't an Israel, we'd have to invent one. Okay. It's our lookout in the Middle East. He talks in glowing terms. Just look up his AIPAC speeches from as recently when he was vice president. So this is all true too. Okay. Biden has a long history of strong support, more than normal. Okay. Now, we also have the positives of the Democratic Party, rank and file, and a few elected officials are much more moving in our direction. Okay. And that's not happening in the Republican Party. That's all true as well. But Biden is not part of that crew. Okay. In fact, it's very clear that he's distancing himself from that crew. We saw in the DNC that there was very little to no progressive representation. And in fact, for instance, they held a video of like the up and coming Democratic women who had just been elected. They had like a whole 5-minute video about them, and they featured so many of them. And two of the most popular, whether you like them or not, women in the Democratic Party, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, were absent from that video. They were completely invisible, and that was deliberate. Okay. And so there's these problems too. So we have to ask ourselves all these questions. And so when people say to me, look, Biden is going to restate funding to UNRWA, great. He's going to maybe reopen the PLO mission in DC, great. He said that he will not consider at all moving the embassy back to Tel Aviv, not great. Also, we have to ask the question of what is our fight going to be like? Here's a real question. We have gotten lots of coalition support on Palestine in the last 4 years, and one might argue a lot of that has come about because Trump is president. In fact, without Trump, there's probably no Rashida and no Ilhan. Okay, so these are all things we have to be sophisticated. And what that means to me is this simply, is that, do I think that I'm probably going to get into a booth in November, especially because I live in Michigan, and vote for Biden? Probably. I mean, yeah, I'm not voting for Trump. Do I think I'm going to get in a booth? Probably. But there's no value in saying as a community right now, unless you only think that, getting invited to an inauguration party is an important thing. But there's no value in giving our vote now without getting something back policy-wise, which we haven't gotten from him yet. And so there's still 2 months left in this campaign. Maybe we get those things, maybe we don't. Maybe we all end up sort of silently walking into the booth and voting for Biden because he's not Trump. But being rah-rah and cheerleading for him right now wastes a lot of the work that we've done over the last few years to get Palestine to be more on the forefront. So I think there's no value in endorsing him unless you want to be in good graces with the Democratic Party, the establishment of the Democratic Party in the DNC, which I don't see much value in that either, because as we see, the DNC, after she said she's going to vote for Biden, openly condemned Linda Sarsour at their convention, not once, but twice, even after they said they apologized to her in a private phone call, which she wasn't on, by the way. And then they condemned her. We have a lot of problems with the Democratic Party, right? And so we have to let them know again that our votes are not cheap, our votes are consequential. So of course, there is a difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I've even heard a few people make the argument that maybe Trump being around will help us create even more coalition support for Palestine. I wrote in the beginning of, after he got elected, I said Trump might liberate Palestine by accident if he lets the Israelis do whatever they want and we end up with more of a one-state reality. I mean, the two-state solution is dead, right? And Biden, look, Biden is telling us basically he's going to send us back to the status quo before Trump minus Jerusalem. Now, I don't think that's good enough for any of us. So it's okay to say to him, that's not good enough for us. Yes, maybe we'll vote for you in a booth, but that's not good enough for us. Fight, fight, fight. That's how you get respect.
Well, Amer, one thing I want you to know, and you already know, and we need to acknowledge that our community has many, many Republicans as well.
Yes.
Not all Arabs vote Democrat. There's a large number of Arabs that vote Republican.
Mhm.
And so too welcomes, those voices as well. What we're interested in is closing this gap between the Democratic Arab American community and the Republican Arab American community. What's the best way in your mind to do that?
Well, that means getting
and
look,
independence as well.
Yeah. And yeah, people who are I consider myself non-aligned. I mean, I lean more
Right.
towards the Democratic Party, but I'm pretty non-aligned. But that means bringing our community together on the issues that unite us. I mean, look, let's be clear. When Jewish communities get together that are Democrat and Republican, but they get together and lobby strongly and put their votes out there strongly on the core issue to them, which is Israel. And so there's no reason. I don't think that if I sat in a room with an Arab American Republican, an Arab American Democrat, and an Arab American Independent, we're probably going to agree on almost all of the principles and things that we want to fight for when it comes to Palestine. So and probably some other
issues in the Middle East.
Yeah, foreign policy issues too, but especially Palestine. Look, there is no question that the turnout for Bernie, which happened all throughout the Arab American community throughout the country, and the unity in voting for him was because of Palestine. Let's not joke ourselves. The Arab American community didn't come out and vote for Bernie in droves because of Medicare for all or Green New Deal or canceling college debt. I mean, we might care about those things, but that's not what drove us to the polls. What drove us to the polls for him was Palestine. And so I think we can come together and be united on these issues, and regardless of party, and say we want to push all politicians on this issue. Now, if we get into our partisan holes and say, look, here's the deal. I tried to push Biden as much as I could, or Trump or whoever, but he's not moving. And so now it's my job just to get behind him full force. Well, I think that's doing a little bit of damage to the Palestinian cause in politics. If we care about that cause. I mean, and here's the thing. Again, if you are a Palestinian American and you get gung-ho behind a candidate before he has done something that you can give back to your community, then he or she uses that support that you've given them to legitimize their current position and not move forward from their current position. And so then you end up in a really bad situation. Right. You can hurt the community. So that's the way that I would look at it, Vivian.
Well, let's have some people jump in and ask a few questions. How are we going to do this? Does one of the hosts want to take over and unmute those who have a question?
Yeah, I think that's how they do it. There's also, people can get on video and physically raise their hands, but there's also like a hand raise feature on Zoom. But however
a feature I don't know what to use. I'm from a different generation here. I can barely navigate my own screen.
Do you see my hand? I just push the button of raise your hand. Do you see it?
Okay, there, yeah, and we hear you.
Okay, go right ahead.
I'm good. I'm just want to show you the button. I'm just listening. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Hi, who's this?
This is Maha Gerard. How are you?
Oh, hey, Maha, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was just listening to the discussion, and I think one of our biggest problems when getting people to vote is that we don't connect with the other issues that people are struggling with in this country, of which we're a part, and that that focusing only on Palestine most of the time is also turning off young voters. I don't think people just voted for Bernie or were excited about Bernie just because of Palestine. Bernie was talking about changing the system. He was talking about Medicare for all. He was talking about, wiping out student debt. And a lot of our young people in the Arab and in the Muslim community were very excited by the possibilities that he presented. And I think as long as we just continue to kind of carry this one issue and forget that we are also living here, and that a victory for one is a victory for all. Like, I didn't hear Amer say one thing about Black Lives Matter, about dealing with the racial injustice in this country, about the immigrants that are being held at the border and in dehumanizing, degrading conditions. And I'm wondering, how can we create more of a connection with other communities? Because ultimately, really, if you're talking about foreign policy or any real change, we're talking about connecting with communities who, you know, can
Yes,
make that
valid
difference
valid
together.
points, Maha. And I think a lot of what you just said are on many people's minds who are in the crowd in front of me. And this is why we're having discussions such as this. Just because Amer didn't mention it, he was probably can't talk about everything. But it takes people like you and like others to bring these issues to the forefront and to engage those of us who are here together on these issues and to get those points of views. But a very valid point of view. Thank you for bringing it up.
So if
Does
I
anybody have a similar opinion or a
well,
an
if
opinion
I
to
could,
the contrary?
if I could chime in on that for 1 second. So
Sure.
first of all, Maha, thanks for your point of view. It would take about maybe 2 or 3 minutes of Googling me and researching me to see that I've actually, as much as anyone else in the Arab American and the Palestinian American community, spoken up and written about Black Lives Matter for years and given many talks and lectures and things about that kind of thing. So me personally, I've been very vocal about those things and making the connection very clearly between the Palestinian struggle and Black Lives Matter. But again, communities have their core issues. If we don't speak up primarily about Palestine, no one else is going to do it. And let's again be very clear. That is the issue that drives out. I'm not saying we don't have people in our community that come out for other issues. Of course we do. Let's not, no one insults the intelligence of our community, but our community drives out to the polls when they see that that issue is being taken care of. That definitely, let me put it like this, expands voter engagement in our community. We know that's the issue. Let's be clear. The Jewish community has power in this country because they raise a lot of money, but because their barometer for any candidate is Israel. Their barometer for any candidate is not other issues. That's why candidates get in line with them, because their votes are held out for that issue.
Well, then that reinforces the fact then, Amer, that we need to be ready when the time comes where, you know, by the grace of God, we have a candidate that is going to advocate for that one issue and be ready as a community, registered to vote in the thousands.
Of course.
Right?
Of
So
course.
that's where organizations such as this come in. We get ready now, not after the fact.
And let me be clear,
politicians want to see that you have the power to vote.
Of course. Let me be clear. I never in my life would ever say don't vote. 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 There's a difference between voting and endorsing, right?
Yeah.
I would never say don't vote. Vote. If you think it's a good idea to get out there and vote for Joe Biden because whatever other reasons you have, I understand. I told you I'm probably going to do that. But there's a difference between putting your community support behind somebody and legitimizing that candidate and voting. Okay, those are the things that I think that we have to talk about. And again, do we care about other issues? Of course we do. Do young people in our community care about other? Of course. I saw it. But again, there's nothing shameful about having a core issue that you fight on and that you stand on, even if you end up voting for that candidate publicly during elections. That's what other communities do. Let's be clear. When candidates go in front of the Black community, they don't talk to them about immigration and they don't talk to them about Palestine. They talk to them about criminal justice reform and they talk to them about economic development in their communities. When they go in front of the Latino community, guess what? They don't talk about foreign policy. They don't talk about Black Lives Matter. They talk about immigration reform. Every community has that, and every community has their core issue. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's not have this like inclusion complex where we have to be like at the table. When you start to think like that, it's very defeatist. I've seen it.
Well, it's multi-issues, but with a core issue in and of that larger picture.
Of course.
Good. So anybody else with their hands up? I cannot see it. Yes, go right ahead, Ahmed.
Shukran. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you for having this event and inviting everyone. It's great to see everyone. Thank you, Amer. Your activism is very much appreciated. And I see one of our fellow Texans, Dr. Eid Mustafa, is on the call.
Yes.
And I see also Terry Mesa, our state representative from Irving, Texas, on the call.
Oh, excellent. Welcome to everybody from Texas.
Thank you. Thank you. I think from my understanding to this event, which is Sautu, which means come on out and vote, folks. So that's the important, that is the subject, and think that is the issue. How important is voting? Important is a civic duty. It is guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States. How important is voting as an Arab American community? Politicians know exactly how many Arabs voted in every single election in the last 40 years.
Right.
I mean, I go through the list myself, and I could tell exactly how many person from Nepal, let's say, or from India, or from Arab countries voted exactly in the election. So the number of people who vote makes a difference of how strong your community and how important your community to those politicians. If only 20, 30, 40% vote, meanwhile other communities, they vote in 60 and 70%, that community is going to be more important than the community that vote less.
Absolutely.
How important is your vote? Your vote is very, very, very important. I cannot emphasize how important, because there was an election that State Representative Terry Mesa was a candidate the first time 4 years ago. And between the thousands of people who voted, she lost by 64 votes.
Wow.
64. She ran the second time in 2018, and this time she won by 4,000 votes.
Yeah. Yes.
So
valid point. Thank you. Very
yes.
valid.
And the other thing is, there was a city council election in Irving, Texas, 3 years ago. There were two candidates, and if I remember correctly, one of them got 3,500 votes, and the other one got 3,500 votes, and the third candidate got like 200 votes. So neither one of them got the 50% plus to be the winner. There was one provisional ballot, an individual from our community that voted a provisional ballot, and he went 3 days later and he cured his ballot, and his vote was counted for one of the candidates, and that one candidate won by one single vote.
Yeah, that's very important. We've got a lot of good candidates that are Arab American running nationwide out in California, Massachusetts. Imagine if they lost by 100 or 200 votes, which could have been Arab American votes, but for the fact that these people either weren't registered or did not go to the ballot boxes to cast their votes. Shame.
Absolutely.
A huge shame. And that's what we're trying to prevent in the years and decades to come. There's strength in numbers. You're absolutely correct. So thank you. Thank you for highlighting those very important occurrences, both in Texas and elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to ask a question, make a
Vivian.
comment?
I have a question. So my name's Zana Badawi. I'm a recent graduate. So I'm just curious about SOTU and how you plan on reaching out to the millennial and Gen Z generations. We make up about 37% of voters that are eligible for this election. So how do you guys plan on reaching out to them and getting them to vote? Because to be honest, this election is looking a little disappointing to us, because we did want someone as progressive as Bernie Sanders, for example, and unfortunately he didn't get to vote. So how do you guys plan on reaching out to these communities of kids, getting them to vote and getting them to make sure that Palestinian issues are just as important as other issues?
Very important, very important. And maybe Amer can also respond, but it's through people like you. Dana's the name. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Dana.
Dana. It's through people
Dana.
like you, the young people in our community, those who have direct access to that community on college campuses and through organizations of which you're a part. We are extending our hands. I come from a different generation. You know, I don't come from your generation. And that's why it's so important for SOTU to bring into its ranks, to its leadership ranks, people from the younger generation that are critical to this issue, especially in the November election. And I'm going to turn it over to Amer to get his point of view as well.
So I agree with, I understand Zaina's frustration. You know, here's the something that people need to understand, and you know, I'm not that much older than Jen. I think I'm like on the border of millennial or something. So I mean, I'm not, you know,
you're my age.
No, well, I don't know, but anyway, so so I'm not, but anyway, so what people don't understand all throughout, and I think Zaina can affirm this. Zaina, how old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay, what people don't understand about younger voters is that much more than older voters, they care about specific policy promises and initiatives and agendas. A lot of time, older voters will be much more into the lesser of two evil things. They will be much more into just having access or a seat at the table. People like Zaina, I believe, I know, and people like Zaina, she can confirm this or not, and I think maybe she will when I'm done, care much more about actual policies and being motivated. You know, they sometimes, I mean like establishment politicians and political activists will sometimes try to talk down to people like Zaina by saying, oh, you're stubborn, oh, you want perfection in a candidate. No, we want real policy promises. And yes, there is a real worry that we're not getting that out of these two presidential candidates. Young people care about policy much more. And by the way, look at what happened in Massachusetts last night. Ed Markey, who's a 74-year-old Senate candidate, was running against a dynasty Kennedy candidate, and he beat him soundly by like 15 points because he spoke about specific policies, namely Medicare for all and a Green New Deal, and Ed Markey has been good on a couple things about Palestine as well. But he was clear on these progressive policies, and young people came out and voted for him. Zaina, am I describing your sort of political view, electoral view accurately?
Oh, 100%. I think the main thing about younger voters is we don't belong to a party. Very much so when older generations vote, they vote blue because they've been voting blue for the past 20 years. They vote red because they've been voting for red for the past 20 years. And so I think it's important for us to realize you don't have to commit yourself to a party. You should commit yourself to a person with the policies, the promises they make, so on and so forth. But my main point of the question was, what is SOTU going to do in order to rally up younger voters?
Well, we plan on going into campuses once they open. We've got a very robust social media campaign. And we are also trying to encourage people to come into our leadership ranks. And this is only the second event after we launched several months ago. So we're still in the preliminary stages. So now is the best time to bring on board a few of these young leaders to kind of help us chart the course then. We are still a work in progress, and we are counting on people of your generation to take the reins and to move on. So again, we are still a work in progress. And that is almost number one on our agenda, is to target people like you.
Well, thank you.
So I would very much encourage you to just inbox us your contact information. We'll continue this discussion about how with you after the event. And I would look forward to talking to you in detail about your thoughts of how we can bring people into the fold through SOTU, which I think could be the platform, which would give them a voice and the opportunity to be heard, and also to make decisions and not just follow in the footsteps of those who are aligned with a particular party or come from a particular generation, but rather chart the course for the future.
Can I chime in at this point? Can I chime in? Mohanad here.
Yes,
Mohanad
Mr.
Malas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just following up on something that came up on the chat, and also to the point that was brought up earlier. Clearly, we need to vote, but if half of us are Republican, half of us are Democrats, we're kind of canceling each other out. One of the issues that I found, and much like Amer is suggesting, which is very important, you have to have an ask. And the ask that you go for, unfortunately, when you have people from, we are here, call us the Arab Americans, we come from various countries, various backgrounds, various interests, and the Palestinian cause may be prime on somebody's mind, somebody else's, it's the Yemeni cause, or
Yes.
it could be the Lebanese or the Egyptian, Syrian, you name the country. So we don't have, and this has happened to us in many, probably are much older than many of the crowd on the call today, certainly older than Zena. And the point here is we always went out to have an ask, but when you have so many different people with so many interests, you walk into a room making an ask and the ask just goes all over the place. Unlike the Israelis that are unified in their ask, which is being Israel. So what we found to be effective is the ask should be to have representation in the campaign, be it in the administration, be it in the transition team. This is the presidential candidate or high up there. You say we need representation, and just asking for representation is not enough. We're working on creating lists of people that, and I would happy to work with you if there are some Arab Americans, because at that point, if we have 3 or 4 or 5 Arab Americans from different backgrounds, a Yemeni, a Palestinian, a Syrian, whatever they may be, provided they're qualified and vetted, there are ways to work on their profiles. We can raise their profiles through social media, through placing articles in Newsweek and in other publications of the Wall Street Journal that can raise the profiles of those 5, 7 qualified and vetted individuals. That would be the ask that we can make that will then combine all of our needs and requirements as opposed to be divided on the ask.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great point. This is something definitely that needs to be discussed further. Of course, Palestine is and has been for decades the hot topic, but it's not the only issue. And unfortunately, as months and years pass, these issues in the Middle East are increasing. We started with Palestine and Iraq and now Yemen, and the issue of normalization with Israel, with the Emirates, and the list goes on and on. It's just never ending. But I think your approach and your suggestion that we do that in terms of identifying the ask is critical. So thank you. Thank you for discussing that and bringing it up. Ask is a very key term, and I'm going to ask again and make another pitch for financial contributions to SOTU so that we can continue this work, make it grow, be able to be in a situation where we can help our community identify these issues, identify unregistered voters, identify how we can grow collectively as a voting bloc and becoming a consequential community, a community that can have consequences to candidates and to politicians, either good or bad. We need to reach a point in our political life where our community is going to be the cause for somebody getting elected or the cause that someone is not going to be re-elected. And that's what it means to me to be consequential. So please, whatever you can do, either today or tomorrow or the day after, to chip in what you can to SOTU, either on a monthly basis or bi-monthly or every 3 months, whatever your situation allows you to do, please do it. I'm asking you once and twice and thrice. Please do what you can to help support this initiative.
Yeah, and very quickly before Dr. Aid jumps in, very quickly, it's SOTU.org, SAAWTU.org. Please go there and share it with all your friends and your contacts. And what Ustaz Mohanad said is very important, right? Is that the only place I'll diverge a little bit is that it doesn't really matter, and I can tell you from doing a lot of work, it doesn't really matter whether we vote Republican or Democrat or whatever. If we show that we're highly engaged and highly voting, remember that I hate to keep comparing ourselves to the Jewish community, but Palestine sort of makes us do that. They're not fully identified with one party or the other. So there's nothing wrong with being involved in many different parties and movements, even independently. Voting and showing that you have a lot of registered voters and that they can vote. And we do have core issues, right? And I think some of the asks are definitely representation, but Palestine unites almost all Arab Americans. non-military, not getting U.S. militarily involved in the Arab world sort of unites all Arab Americans. There are certain policy asks, and there are things that divide us, and we have to have discussions about those things. But on the things that unite us, we can be very clear with politicians what we want from them. Sorry, Dr. Aid.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's okay. Uh,
Dr. Aid, yes, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Very well said. You guys are touching things that really matter, and that will take our community from complaining to each other and belly aching about not being heard to a way where we can be counted and we can be heard. I have just two simple questions. I noticed that you managed to get a tax-free number for this organization, Vivian, which is very helpful. It might matter to some people. My second point is the Arab American Institute has Yalla Vote. Any cooperation, any lessons learned from their experience? And I assume that your effort and our effort is to be a national organization that does not compete but adds value to our vote.
Absolutely. We aim to complement what's already out there, especially the Arab American Institute. Dr. Jim Zarbi was our first guest when we did a soft launch for SOTU back in May, I believe. He appeared through a Zoom event that was attended by many. He supports us. We aim to complement what Yalla Vote does, and Yalla Vote complements us. There is nothing wrong, and it's the opinion of both the Institute as well as SOTU that we operate simultaneously with the same mission in mind. The more the merrier. And there's certainly, it's good competition. Okay, if there is competition, it's good competition. And certainly complementary to one another, as it is with what, the Arab American Democratic Club here, the Arab American Republican Club, which isn't as active as it used to be back in the day. AmVote here in the state of Illinois, which is a state issue focused PAC. Again, we aim to complement these organizations. We are members of each and every one of them. I sit on the board of several of them, and I see absolutely no conflict or contradiction. To the contrary, I think we make each other stronger by doing this. But our mission is extremely focused on voter registration and casting our vote. We are a 501c3, Dr. Mustafa. So we are tax exempt. We are also a C4 as well. So if you log on to sotu.org, it'll delineate exactly what we are authorized and not authorized to do, both as a C3 and a C4. So any contribution to the C3 arm is, of course, tax deductible. So thank you for bringing that up, something I didn't mention.
Yeah, and obviously there can never be too many voter engagement initiatives, and each one of you on this call is your own personal voter engagement initiative, because each of you is a leader in your own way. You don't know how much influence you have among the people in your immediate circle. You each are probably worth 25, 50, 100 voter registrations. Never underestimate your own. There are people in your circle who are like, hey, I wonder what she's thinking. Oh, and then when you post something and they go, oh, I didn't know she's that engaged, and they look to your leadership. So be involved and be loud. And another plug is make sure, because this is all related, make sure all of you, if you haven't done already, and get other people to do it, to fill out the census, right? Make sure that you are getting involved in doing the census. I know SOTU encourages that as well. In the census, what I'm asking people to do is check other and write in your country. You will be counted this time. They haven't counted that stuff before, but they will now. Check other, because the more of us who check other, the better case we'll have to get our own box.
Absolutely.
Next time. Check other and write your country. Don't write Arab, because we want the countries so that we see, because if you write Palestine, we know you're Arab, and then we also know what country you're from. So write your country so that we have all of that data when we go back and look at it. And don't write Middle Eastern, because that's a colonial term and it doesn't really mean anything. So write Arab. Don't write Middle Eastern. White people came up with the term Middle Eastern, we don't.
You have a question in the chat.
Yeah, and there's also somebody that had his hand raised, and we're almost 8 o'clock, and I know people probably want to get going, and we want to try to wrap it up if that's what everybody wants to do. But I think Nizam al-Khatib has had his hand raised for a while. So let me give him the opportunity, and if there's another person that wants to chime in before we wrap up, we can. Nizam? Are you still there? Are you upset with us and you left the
I don't see his name anywhere, so maybe he left. Yeah.
He probably left. I just saw a text saying I've been okay. Any other last minute comments before we wrap up?
I see Assad.
Can I say a few comments if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Probably we will be the last one today.
Assad, yes, Assad.
Yes, this is Assad Khan here. Very interesting debate, and I'm glad I joined and listened to all of you. My suggestions or question is, Palestine issue is just not an issue for Palestinians. It's the issue for the entire Muslim community in the US. And my suggestion is, collaborate, work with the other active groups. In Illinois, there are so many other Muslim community groups from South Asia, Indonesia, North Africa. Collaborate and work with them, because your numbers, your votes count. And you deliver those numbers, they will come and sit with you. They will come and talk to you. So, I mean, my suggestion is just find a force as one unity, force as a united community, which we can deliver big numbers. And if you deliver those numbers to whoever the party and the candidate is, they will sit and talk to you.
Absolutely.
Well, Assad, that's a good point. However, we have had problems, and a lot of Palestinian activists here know this. We've had some problems with Muslim American political organizations, and I could name a couple if I have to, who have actively set aside the Palestinian question in order to gain access to politicians. There's a couple of them out there now, and they end up normalizing. So, unfortunately, for instance, Mgage is one of these organizations which does, or, works with the ADL and works with, has gone on Zionist-funded trips to Israel. And so there is I'm talking about non-Arab Muslim organizations that are Muslim. Not all. There's a lot of organizations that are Muslim that are very on our side fully with this. But we have a lot of questions to answer there. There's nothing wrong with holding Palestine as a barometer to some of these organizations. And so, like, for instance, in the past, you have CARE, which is a Muslim organization, but totally great on Palestine. You have AMP, the American Muslims for Palestine, totally great on Palestine. You have Mgage, who we have some questions with. You have ISNA, who we have some questions with, who we have to deal with making sure that they don't normalize. And what do we mean by normalization? We mean dealing with Zionist groups without centering the question of Palestine. So if a Zionist group comes to you and says, hey, let's have an interfaith event and talk about how we both love peace, you have to say to them, whoa, what about Palestine?
Thank you.
Yeah, you have to say, let's talk about Palestine first, then we can deal. Unfortunately, there's been some groups, and look, the Muslim community is not monolithic. There are a number of different groups that operate under this umbrella of Muslim community, but some of them have acted in a way that they use the Palestine issue to gain access into a space so that they can then throw it under the bus and say, oh, that's how they get into that space, and then they throw us under the bus.
I totally understand
very
that.
Aware of these things too.
Our community is evolving. Engage, for example, you remember when they endorse and they work with the Zionist group, they are also evolving now. They've changed, and with time, I am hoping, they will have a better understanding of issues. But if they stick to working with the Zionists, drop them. Don't work with them.
Well,
I guess the main thing here is that Palestinians speak for Palestinians. Okay, we speak on this issue. We speak for ourselves. If other groups want to show solidarity with us and follow our lead, that's wonderful. If they don't want to do that, then they can just be quiet about Palestine and work on other stuff. But don't use Palestine to get a foot in the door and then do things that are against the will, the stated will of the Palestinian community.
Okay.
That's
This-
the problem we've been having.
This
Totally
is
understand
a,
that, but there's
a
a lot of
discussion that can last a
who support the
lifetime, my
Palestinian
friends,
issue.
but a very interesting one. And I'm very glad, Assad, that you brought it up. This is something that really needs, hard discussion. But again, there's not enough time this evening. This series of events is called Tea and a Topic. None of us had a cup of tea tonight. It's the first time. We're still getting our feet wet and trying to learn our way around Zoom events. But I think it's been a very worthwhile, excellent discussion this evening. We hope to continue with these series of Tea and a Topic, perhaps monthly. We welcome your suggestions on the topics that you would like to discuss, all with the aim of growing this organization, growing SOTU to become the organization we want it to be. Again, this is an operation that is strictly dedicated to voter registration and to organizing our community, the Middle East and North African community, into a consequential voting community, a community that makes a difference. So please inbox us, get onto our website at sotu.org, SAAWTU.org. Send us your suggestions, your comments for the next Tea and a Topic. And please consider donating. Again, one last ask of each and every one of you. Please give what you can. Again, we are just starting. It's baby steps here. We're growing, a work in progress. And without you, it can never be done. There's a lot of several other board members that did not speak this evening. So it's a collective effort. You can read up on them on the website. Again, the board is evolving. It is growing. We expect to enlarge it and to bring others into the fold. Many people who have been active over the years and are on this event tonight. I see them, I see their faces, I see their names. They haven't spoken. Hopefully the next time they will. And I invite you to please join our ranks. You have a lot to offer. Every point of view is welcome. It's nonpartisan. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. You have no party affiliation. You're a one-issue voter. You're a multi-issue voter. You are a voter, and that's what counts. And your voices and your perspectives are essential, and they are most welcome. So thank you, and thank you to Amer.
Yeah, and can I just say
I want to
one
apologize to those of you
Oh.
that wanted to ask questions and couldn't. I'm sure Amer would stay with us all night and ask them.
I
I'm
would.
hoping he would come back again. But I
Yes.
want to thank you for doing this, Amer.
Yeah, and no problem. And again, sotu.org, donate and let people know, in my house when we were growing up, Vivian, when you served someone tea, that meant it was time for them to start to go. And so we would, we have this thing in Arabic where we say you start leaving and it takes like
Yes.
an hour. So I think we did pretty good. You serve people tea and then
We
it takes
did.
an hour to leave. And that's
We
how
should have
we
left
had our
at
meal.
8 and it's now 8:14. So
That's-
we're
that's
still
normal.
getting ready to leave.
That's normal. That's normal. They tried to kick us out of Palestine and we haven't left yet. So it's okay. Remember, each of you is a leader in your own way. You have a group of people around you who care what you think and care what you do. So get them
Yes.
engaged in voting, get them on the census, and never, ever, don't let anyone ever make you feel ashamed about speaking up for Palestine as loud as you can at every time. There is never a bad time to talk about Palestinian justice and Palestinian rights, even in front of the most powerful people in the country. There's nothing wrong with pointing your finger in their face and saying no, even if you're going to vote for them. But there's nothing wrong with always speaking up about Palestine all the time.
Great. Thank you for those
You're right.
final words. Everyone, if you're interested in volunteering, interested in having a discussion with me, with any other board member, please send us a message. We're looking forward to it. Thank you again. Each and every one of you is important to us. Each and every one of you is essential in their own way. We are open to anyone and everyone as long as we are aligned with our mission and the intent of this organization. And Amer, free Palestine.
Wear your masks.
All right, you have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Bye-bye.
hosting. Appreciate it. Bye now.
Assalamu alaikum. Bye-bye.
Wa alaikum assalam.